Hello and welcome back to Jolie's. I'm Jolie, that son of a bitch that Dolly warned you about. And today we're going to be watching a SuburbanWill video titled The Gen Z Culture War Problem. Let's get into it.
I don't know about you, but it seems to me that every day the world is becoming more and more divided. Last time, I talked about the divide between men and women in what some people call the gender war. But after reflecting on that video, I've come to realize that there's also a much larger battle happening at the same time. Gen Z is trapped in the middle of a culture war, where people are constantly—
Oh, brother. The culture war may have finally heated up. Like, we are at the boiling point, but it has been a cultural cold war for a long time. Like, we were having culture wars back when I was a teenager in like the early 2000s. It's definitely swings and ebbs and flows, but I guess the difference is the culture war developed while I was developing. Like, it started to get to that Cold War status when I had reached like adolescence. Gen Z was born into the culture war. They don't know a world without a culture war.
constantly fighting for little victories over each other all the time. And this isn't really a Gen Z thing, but I do think that the non-stop cultural warfare has been something uniquely haunting our young adult years.
Yeah, geez. That right there, and this is why I'm a fence sitter, is because I can't completely sign up for one side or the other, and I know there's more than two sides, but let's face it, there's the Republicans and there's the Democrats, and if you're a Republican, you're all of these things, or you basically take not a la carte. I like a la carte, was it moral stance. When you sign up to be a Republican, it seems like it just comes with all these opinions, and same thing if you sign up for being a Democrat. At least that's the way it seems on the outside, and you have to check off every single one of the boxes to be taken seriously by the diehards.
We're walking into a fight that we never started, but everyone is forcing us to pick a side. While we're still trying to figure out our lives, others are trying to convince us to blame our struggles on someone else. But
that 30-year-old guy from Chainsaw Man, or the older demon hunter from Chainsaw Man, perfect like example of like a Gen X, like a jaded Gen Xer.
But before we continue, Raid Shadow Legends is
Oh
back.
my
This time
goodness.
they're teaming up
All
with
right, we're
Paramount
going to watch
for
the
their
ad, guys,
Mutant
but
Ninja Turtles collab.
we got
Raid is a
I
cross-platform
got to give
game
them
with a ton of content.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are going big
From now
because
until November
they
13th,
are
you can get
also
all 6
going to be in the
TMNT
new
champions
Magic the
started
Gathering
with
set, so there must be
Kinda
something
takes me
going on.
back
They're
to my
like trying to
childhood.
re-push.
Just log in for 7 days and he's all yours. He spreads debuffs, trash talks his enemies, and dodges their attacks. They're also coming through with Raph,
Okay.
Leo, Donatello, April, and of course,
You have to admit, this
Shredder.
is the
And if
first
you
Raid
collect
Shadow
all 6
Legend
champions, you
commercial
also
I've seen in
unlock
a
the
long
special bonus
time.
reward. But
So
that's
either
not
I've
all. You
drifted
can
away
also
from
use these 6 promo codes to claim
the
a
Raid
free
Shadow
legendary
Legend
champion
like
to boost your
ecosystem,
squad. And
or
on top of that,
they are
you'll
just now
instantly unlock a
like
huge starter
getting
pack
back
that
into the
comes with
game.
the epic champion Tagore from the Orc faction.
All
And
right.
once you reach level 15, you'll
This
unlock
is-
another champion, Thane. So what are you waiting for? Join my clan Suburban and download Raid using the QR code on screen or the link in the description. Shout out to Raid for sponsoring this video. And now back to business.
Okay.
People are dissatisfied with the way life is currently, and they want things to change, but they don't exactly know what's causing these problems. So instead, they pick scapegoats to blame things on. It's easy to look at something and say, if this thing wasn't in my life, things would be better. For some people, those things are minorities, immigrants, women, and other marginalized groups. And
Damn, he is getting. He is really throwing this one character way under the bus. Like, yeah, I guess you have to straw man somebody, but I feel like he's too cool of a character to be this mean. Come on.
And for others, they're figures like politicians or media personalities. So on both sides, they celebrate when these so-called threats are removed. Some would even prefer if by force, in order to send some kind of message. However, the target is ever changing. The solutions to our problems are far more complex than simply removing a person or a group of people. So we remain forever dissatisfied with the way things are going. We constantly feel like we're under attack and use that as justification to attack others. That's what this culture war is. As Gen Z continues to grow up, we're facing our own set of challenges that don't always seem fair to us. Despite being a generation with more education and resources than those before us, many of us are struggling just to find our footing in the adult world. Jobs won't hire us, but then complain that our generation is lazy and doesn't want to work. Money is tight, but bills are high. And on top of it all, we're lonely and sad because men and women can't get along. It feels like no matter what you do, the expectations for young adults only get higher. But at the same time, the opportunities are becoming more scarce.
I just want to say he's perfectly summing up the problem, and it is depressing. And also, if you're, I've probably been, I didn't develop quite the way that one maybe should. And so I would say that even though I am knocking on 40's door, I still feel like I'm in the young adult demographic when it comes to my social economic status. So I feel like I'm also going through these things. I don't even know if I could get a apartment in a just straight down the line normal apartment complex right now. I don't know if my credit score and all that jazz would enable me or allow me to actually get a place like that. I'm right now in kind of like a, like I know the owner of this building kind of thing. Like I pay my rent directly to the person who owns it, that sort of thing.
We're tired, frustrated, and angry, but no one out there is looking.
Oh, and that is the worst. I am so bad about this. Just to put, I need to follow my own advice here, but put the phone away when you sit down in the bed or when you lay down in the bed.
Looking for solutions. They just want new soldiers to help fight for their cause. And the young Gen Z mind is the newest weapon in the culture war.
Well, yeah, because it's the most like, malleable. They can still change your mind. Hell, they could probably still change my mind. I wouldn't be surprised if I am constantly being manipulated and have like opinions shift through, persistent propaganda. And they have different avenues to do it too. So yeah, it's just like everybody's getting, unbeknownst to them, drafted into one side or the other. That's why you have to look at, take the long view, stand up tall, sit on the fence, look around and realize most of these issues don't even really matter. Or at the very least, they're not going, the specific minutia of the issue is not going to spin out to anything that important in the long run. Everybody's going to forget about it, unless your name is Hassan Paikar, and anytime you have an issue, it just gets etched into stone and put up on your L board for everyone to reference all the time. And look, I have my issues with Hassan as like a propagandist, but that man, he, like, any misstep he makes is the worst faith is put upon it, and it is used to he's going to die a death by 1,000 cuts. That's essentially where he's heading towards.
Man, this sucks. I got ghosted by my date and rejected from my dream job all in the same week. When are things gonna get better? What now? Listen, I already told you I'd have the rent.
Hello?
The rent by. Who are you? Oh, well, I'm Chad Traddington, and it sounds like you're tired of the status quo and want things to change. Well, yeah, I do. Can you really help? Of course. I'm here with all the answers to your problems. Well, I got stood up on a date this week. Do you know why dating is so hard these days? Well, it's that darn feminism. Really? I thought women's rights were a good thing. Of course not. Women making their own decisions is never good.
Oh.
That's why we used to not let them vote. I guess that really makes sense when I don't think about it. Do you know why it's so hard to find a job too? Well, that's because of diversity. They're giving all the jobs to black people. Really? Is that true? Who cares? Everyone knows all black people are lazy and unqualified. That's why they need DEI. Well, I have no way of challenging that statement, so it must be true. Exactly. Now let me tell you about immigrants. For Gen Z, a lot of us did what we were supposed to do, but we don't feel like we're where we're supposed to be. So
Millennials too. I mean, especially I'm just a cutting edge millennial. I was a millennial who is more like in the Gen Z spot. Now, was that because of my own decision making and my own lack of taking initiative in finding a career, or just being somehow convinced, possibly through psyops, that I shouldn't pursue a job that gives good money because that would just make me miserable? Because that's what every movie basically said throughout the 90s. Is like, a job that pays well is just going to make you miserable. A family is going to make you miserable. Like everything that like normal people have done for thousands upon thousands of years, that's misery. Freedom, and for what freedom is time. And what do you exchange for time? Money. But I will say he is building a little bit of a straw man here with this character. I mean, not to say that he doesn't, it's this is the thing about the fence sitters, though. Sometimes you have to walk on the fence, and it's basically walking a tightrope. Let's see if we can unpack a little bit more as we go. But I will say that the blanket term feminism is a blanket term. It covers a full, like, kind of a movement that is started hundreds of years ago over 100 years ago at this point, and has gone through waves and evolutions. And the era of feminism we're in now is not necessarily the same that is associated with women's right to vote. So that's, I think it's disingenuous to say that people who have qualms and criticisms and don't care for current day feminism are having the same. Now some of them for the meme, some people for the memes are like memeing about like repealing the 19th, and some people are doing it and saying it legitimately. But I also think that it's not, like I said, this is a tightrope. But the criticism of that and of tripping over my words. But yeah, these things he is kind of lightly strong. I know which side of the aisle he probably sits upon and what he thinks is going wrong. Now it's not to say that the people who are pushing these buttons for this young generation that is very malleable, and any young generation is. It's not just Generation Z. Millennials were malleable, like me. But what I just say, I was somehow got psyops or accidentally culturally convinced that I should avoid getting a real job, like the plague, basically. Anyways, let's keep going and see what else he picks at, and let's see if I can clarify my stances, more nuanced stances, and maybe try to build some Iron Men here.
So we're left sitting here confused and searching for answers. Gen Z didn't start the culture war, but we've inherited it. We grew up and suddenly found ourselves in the middle of an ongoing battle. We don't even know who we're supposed to be fighting or what we're fighting about. When I was reflecting on the gender war, I realized that for a lot of younger Gen Z guys, when it comes to women, they don't even know where the hostility comes from. They just know that they grew up and suddenly all the girls hated the guys. You're confused and hurt because you're getting attacked in a fight that you didn't start. And that's the thing about the culture war. Because we're fighting battles we have no actual stake in, everyone feels like a victim in some way. You don't know how you ended up in the battle, but you know you need to defend yourself. And yet these people in the culture war aren't interested in offering us solutions. Instead, they want you to feel like you're constantly under attack so they can justify sending hate in the other direction. Because
that is a great point. That is something that I strongly believe. No matter what movement, if a movement doesn't come with a some sort of clarified, this is our goal, and when we achieve this goal, this movement can disperse. Then all you are doing is just constantly adding noise. Like this is, if I yet again I'm worried about the things I'm going to cite because I'm going to seem way more on one side of the fence than the other. But it's like, I think the civil rights movement had a clear destination, at least the original civil rights movement. We don't even really associate the civil rights movement of, like, say, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X with the current, racial conflicts, of today. And it feels like what they were going for and what they wanted to institute, they had goals and they were succeeded. They did away with segregation, and Jim Crow laws. And now maybe in retrospect, like if we lived through it, we would have been like, well, yeah, but they also wanted to do all these things, and the movement just eventually petered out. I'd have to do more research, obviously, but it does seem from my outsider perspective that they had goals, they achieved their goals, and then they were able to sort of like, disperse for the most part. But then you had leaders who wanted to maintain that level of power. I think of what was his name? The Rainbow Coalition. I'm forgetting. But anyways, yeah, it's like, what is, like, look around, like when you're thinking about signing up to, or, participating in something, it's like, what is the is this a standing army that's just always going to be going after something? Or is this like a project that has a final goal in mind that can be achieved? Because I think that is much more healthy, and that is more like how we as humans operate. Like, stories need ends. Anyways, that's like, let's see if I can refine that as we go. Think they can do what they want. Feminism makes women think they can do what they want. Interesting.
Because they came for you first. So why wouldn't you retaliate? You're only defending yourself. There's this weird selective outrage where the same people who endorse something one day turn around and condemn it the next. People will attack you and then blame you for hitting back. We go back and forth with each other every day and then pretend like we don't know who threw the first punch. So when bad things happen, we get to point our fingers and say, our side would never do this. When in fact, your side has indeed done that too. Culture warriors don't have values or principles. Instead, they try to score moral victories over people by constantly contradicting themselves and moving the goalpost. It's mentally—
That's something else to watch out for. That's a good point, SuburbanWill. The goalpost must maintain you. That's why, for better or worse, the people who do debates, when they do it well, it starts out with an agreement as to what they're going to be debating, an agreement of terms to firmly plant the goalpost, so that way it can constantly come back to that as the main topic. Now, I think I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'm personally not a big debate person. Not to say that I don't think, at least in the idea of like a debate that one side is trying to win. A good debate is a debate where both sides give a little and come more towards like each other, and see the can agree upon the way that they're both seeing the world, that they can accept the other lens, and they accept the other person's lens enough to understand that there is another aspect to this, and that way they can then attack the problem, hopefully together, to come to some sort of goal that they can agree upon. And just like any good negotiation, it probably is that both sides will be slightly dissatisfied in the end because they don't get everything they want, but they will get something, So I guess like I'm more interested in, conversations that lead to synthesis, a thesis, an antithesis, and a synthesis to come from it, versus like I dunked on you harder, I got more facts out quicker, and thus my side won that debate. Like, that's not to me, that's not a debate. That's a weird competition. It's like verbal basketball.
Exhausting because you feel like you're being gaslit. It's obvious to anyone where the inconsistencies are, but the burden of proof is on those willing to call it out. And even when you throw their own words back at them, they just lie about it anyway. I've noticed
like that yet again. That term is thrown out, and sometimes it's very valid for it to be that's not that the dog whistle isn't the right term, but it is very valid for your ears to perk up and be like, well, what did you mean in context? But it is true that, and I've seen it in plenty of videos where people will cherry pick like a sentence and cut it down to just the sentence and cut out everything surrounding the sentence. They cut out everything, anything that would be preceded by therefore or but, and they'll just hyperfixate on that one cut point. And both sides, this is a both sides thing. Both sides do it to try to own their opponents, and that right there is what I mean is like one of the cores of fence sitting, of like And I should say this. I think I've actually jeopardized some relationships recently because of this, but we probably shouldn't call this a moderate movement. It's just that we're a movement that's trying to moderate. No. But it's not that we're radical centrist who want the world, not that I'm radical centrist and I want the world to be just in the center. What I'm saying is you're not going to, fighting the culture war as it is being depicted here by Will, is not going to actually move anything. It's just going to keep everything the same. It's like two equal forces going like this, and every now and then it's like that. It's like, that's why I say it's like you're rising above. You're seeing the entire landscape, and you're actually making decisions based on the overview that can lead to something bigger being built and something better, and that can actually lead to progress. This is both a conservative philosophy and a progressive one, because it's like you need the conservatism to challenge ideas, try to knock down bad ideas coming. That way the good or the more likely to work out ideas can progress forward, and you try to let those through. At least that's sort of, it's some call it fence sitting, others call it gatekeeping. But yeah, that's, it's like ultimately I agree with him, even though I think like I said, I think he's doing a little bit of disservice to this video, going to cause people to check out early because of the strawman the comedic strawman he's putting in.
The culture war involves being a contrarian. People will take the side of something insane just because they don't want to agree with you or admit that you're right. Yeah. Someone could say, I support helping blind old ladies cross the street. And some random guy will be like, well, I support hitting blind old ladies with buses.
Well, I think what that based Reddit pilled guy would actually say is something to the effect of like anybody who needs assistance in this world everybody needs to fend for themselves. If they can't pull their own weight, then they're dead weight. And that old lady is already living on borrowed time, and what is she contributing to society? So if she crosses the street on her own and gets hit by a bus, then it's not going to, it's just nature's taking course. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is that's probably how that's closer to the Iron Man version of the argument. Somebody's not just going to be like, I want to see more old ladies hit by buses all the time, frequently. That's my one stance. But they're going to say if a blind old lady can't figure out how not to get hit by a bus, then is it really such a tragedy that they get hit by buses? I think that's closer to like what the argument would be.
What? Why would you support something like that? Because it's not fair. Why should blind old ladies get special treatment? Because they're blind and old. Well, I don't agree with it. Okay, well, even if you don't agree with me, why would you support something that's actively trying to harm them? Well, I don't really agree with hitting them with buses. I think helping them cross the street is actually a good thing. Okay, so why not just say that? Because then I will have to admit that I'm wrong. And I can never be wrong. Why not? Everyone's wrong sometimes. Because it's bad for my ego. Seriously? Gen Z
okay, he nailed that point right there. Yes. Admit that you're wrong. I can admit that I'm wrong. I really want everybody to be able to admit when they're wrong. Admit you're wrong. Evolve your ideas. I've had plenty of people come to me in my life when I was spouting out some, I don't want to say full-blown rancid, but maybe, not fully thought out ideas, and criticize me and kind of like, make me see it from a different perspective. And it helped, and I, changed, and, maybe you don't actually have to admit out loud to everybody around you right then and there that you're wrong. But you could go back to the lab and tell and look down at your notes and be like, I think I was wrong about this. And then just change the way you present yourself from then on out. It doesn't, you don't have to give them the victory. I'll say that. If your ego is really that delicate, you don't have to sit there and be like, you don't have to Saturday morning lesson of the week it and be like, wow, I never thought of it that way. You are so right. You don't have to give them the satisfaction, but you can still learn.
Generation has grown up in a more progressive climate. Since we were kids, we've been taught things like smoking is bad. Men and women should be equal. Don't be racist. And I think for the most part, we all agree on these things. At least we used to. But in recent years, there's been a growing number of people who want you to see this kind of progress as a threat. They want you to see equality as injustice and inclusion as replacement. We aren't adding more seats to the table, we're kicking people out to make more room. And they want you to think that if you don't kick others out first, you'll be the one left standing on the outside. I think it's ironic that we often complain about boomers being a selfish generation that only look out for themselves, while we're watching ourselves do the same as we fight for what's left. The culture war never ends because you're forced to make an enemy out of everyone. Now that we're the adults, even children are under attack as people debate the value of their lives against the cost of their
the fact that they have to do active shooter drills in school in the same way that I did fire drills is that's like one of those, like, that is a sad state of affairs. It's worth the cost of unfortunately some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment. I mean, granted, that is what Charlie Kirk said, and maybe was even the middle of saying when he was shot. I don't know if I think that I should have foreseen this with the video title and subject matter. I'll say this: I don't disagree with Kirk. It is unfortunate. It's like I think he used the analogy of the car. It's like the car is a much deadlier technology in terms of deaths per year versus guns, and now, granted, almost no car death is intentional. Like, that is far more, gun. The difference being is gun deaths is much more rare to be an accident and much more often to be an intent. But I do agree with that perspective, and I am somebody who thinks that it's better for us to have guns and I would rather our culture be one that it is like, yes, we all have guns, but gun safety and gun education is something that happens in school or is understood. Every parent has to do it. I think that's like, the two, where the two paths diverge. It's like, the people who are arguing for the Second Amendment, a lot of them, especially the responsible ones, came from backgrounds. And I should say this: I don't even think I've ever shot a gun. Just throwing that out there. And thus, I don't trust myself to have a gun in my house. I wouldn't buy a gun first. I would take gun safety classes before I went and purchased a gun, which I think everybody probably should have to do, or it should be seen as a social responsibility to do it. And I think that the people who fight for the Second Amendment are strongest, at least the ones who are most genuinely representing the Second Amendment are the ones who grew up in a gun culture and have gun, they understand what gun safety really means and etiquette, and they live and breathe by those and would not suffer any fools. That's my, that's and those are the people we should be worried for, are the people who are fools or just never educated and them getting their hands on guns. So I guess if anything, my stance on it is, yes, more guns, but with more guns comes more education, and it being culturally, we're just culturally gun people instead of just like, because what it tends to happen, I think that's another thing I should say about the fence sitter versus the two sides battling, is what ends up happening is when these decisions are made, it just creates this big divide of like the worst possible solution. It's like guns. So in our culture, it's like guns are ever present and rarely taken seriously, or are not taken nearly as seriously. It's like, if they're going to be everywhere, then everybody needs their education. Everybody should be trained, or like, assuming that you pass some basic competency, you should have to go through gun safety and training, even if you don't plan on owning a gun, if they're going to be like that in this culture. So that's, and I think that would be a much better thing than we have guns everywhere, and a lot of people just decide that they don't want to have anything to do with them. Like, yeah, I guess that's where I'm at.
Their ideals. We're more interested in running defense for the people doing the harm instead of protecting the ones being harmed. People have unlimited excuses for why the people they support didn't actually mean what they said, but offer zero compassion for the people who challenge them. You feel powerless sometimes because no one takes you seriously because you're still young, and you can't even rely on the people you vote for to do the right thing anymore.
That is even also the government 100% true. Will, we aren't going to be saved by politicians. I mean, like him or not, I do think that, yet again, going back to Charlie Kirk, I do think what he was doing, like stirring up conversation, you know, in the kind of the public square with the young people, was a good thing overall in concept. How many qualifiers can I put on this to where you're not going to be mad at me? But you know, the idea of like, we need to talk about these things, and these solutions aren't going to be figured out in Washington. They might get to Washington and eventually be passed as laws, and that would be a good thing, but it's not going to be the lawmakers in Washington who figure these things out. It's going to be the people coming together and changing the culture, and then, like, you know, shipping up the laws from there.
Government itself has turned into another theater for the culture war. Seems like no matter who I vote for, nothing changes. What's even the point? Hey there, young man. I'm running for office and I'd like your vote. What are some things you'd like to see in this country? Well, I'd like to be able to afford groceries and to go to the doctor too. Everything is so expensive now. Okay, so what I'm hearing is you want to get rid of all the immigrants. What? No, that's not what I said at all. Oh, I see. You want us to ban gay people. No, look, can you just do something about the prices? I'm late on rent almost every month.
Amen.
Okay, if you vote for me, I'll promise to lower prices. Thank you. And we're gonna throw 100 kittens into a wood chipper. What? Why would you do that? To own the libs. Okay, I just
want to say, there's been a lot of owning the conservatives too out there recently. You know, just like, you know, the whole pregnant women taking Tylenol after it was said to not be healthy for pregnant women to take Tylenol just because it came from the mouth of Donald Trump and RFK Jr. It's like, that's the mentality that we need to get totally away from, in my opinion. That sort of like, if person I dislike says something, I automatically distrust it. I know that it seems like, and that's how society has worked up until this point, but it's not quite how modern society can work. I'm really, really trying to walk on this tightrope, but let us face it. It like, yes, the conservatives have done it probably more frequently and more obnoxiously, and it gets usually highlighted in the press. But if you go on Twitter after, you know, if the next time Donald Trump makes some sort of statement about like things, I don't know, like he could say, I don't know, Chinese food is the best food for you, you know, whatever. Like, we need to get better Chinese people here to make better Chinese food because it's going to turn us into a super nation. And like, you would see people like buying Chinese food just to throw it in the trash can. That's, you know, and it's like, and yeah, so it could be, you know, the right or the left. There are the people out there who just want to video themselves doing obnoxiously stupid acts of symbolic rebellion against the other side's pleas to help try to make a better society as they see it.
Want lower prices if you're gonna throw 100 kittens into a wood chipper, but the woke left is gonna be so mad when we do it. Yeah, because that's bad for everybody. Exactly. That's why we need a woman in office. Wouldn't you agree, young man? I mean, yeah, that would be great, but I'm really struggling just
what are her policies? What has she done? What's her qualifications? And I would say the same thing about a man. Just throwing that out there. That's the but that you should be asking when somebody's like, we should have a woman, you know, it's like, I will make my vice presidential candidate a woman. That was such a red flag for me for Biden. I'll say this. I voted for Biden in 2000. I wish I had voted third party. I usually vote third party. I got swept up in the we have to stop Trump at all cost kind of thing. And I regret it, actually. I straight up regret voting for Biden.
To make ends meet on my own. Can you help? In our time of need, our country needs its leaders to step up and do what we do best. Absolutely nothing. Do either of you have any real policies? Young man, I can tell your issues are very important to you. which is why I promised to dedicate $20 billion, really, to the military. Come on. I try to keep my personal politics out of my videos. So much so that sometimes people think I'm a centrist, but I'm not. If you haven't guessed by now, I'm pretty left-wing on just about everything.
I totally get that from this video. You're not doing a great job of, like I said, it's a comedy video. I'm totally going to give you the pass, but you are definitely falling into the straw man fallacy every single time you're bringing up the opposite side.
So yeah, I'm woke. A lot of people have the idea that seeing both sides of every issue is automatically a good thing. One person could be like, we should throw 100 kittens into a wood chipper. And another could be like, actually, we shouldn't. And the enlightened centrist will be like, yeah, bro, low-key, both sides.
I thought he was going to say, the enlightened centrist will be like, how about 50 kittens? Yeah, but the enlightened centrist is definitely probably like not quite the fence sitter that I'm talking about. And, you know, he brought up fence sitting earlier as being labeled as one, but I think this is something different than just stepping out of the argument and trying to, you know, it's about trying to see above the argument and seeing, like, you know, the more, I don't know, the roots of the problem and surveying it from above.
It's okay for once in your life to be able to stand up and say, hey, I think this is wrong. I know the culture war constantly forces us to pick sides, but they say if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. I just find it a bit annoying when people sit on the fence in the face of something obviously wrong. On one hand, you could have a burger. Sure, it has tomatoes and pickles that you don't like, but maybe you could just pick them off and still enjoy the burger. And on the other, you have a poop sandwich with pea sauce. And some people would still look at both of those options and go, yeah, both of these are equally bad. It's important to keep an open mind and see things from a different perspective. But you don't need to try to poop sandwich just to see how it tastes. I don't like to get political because I feel like it distracts from my message. I've noticed that when you bring up politics, people start arguing against what they think you believe instead of actually listening to the words you're saying.
100% Will. You nailed that one. Yes, when it's like, if and because of the whole, like, if you consider yourself a conservative or you take the conservative approach on one topic, then all of a sudden now you are one of them and you have all of these beliefs. And it's like you know, and it's like why the two-sided dichotomy is probably bad. It's at the very least it's four sides. I'm not talking about the traditional political compass. I think there's a better one out there. I'll see about taking that test. I'll find the traditional political compass, and then I'll find the more up-to-date and less biased, because the political compass is very biased by the writers of it, and I'll take both and compare my results. That said, yeah, the people don't listen. They just want, for the most part, they just want to argue. Whenever I talk to my dad, he's a Fox News conservative, and like I say in my moniker, former leftist. I am trying my best to meet him halfway now that I'm no longer, you know, just weighing myself down on the opposite side of him. I'm trying to wade into these waters, but no matter, you know, but he's still very much firmly planted in his side, and so he never, like, I try to meet him halfway and all he wants to do is pull me further to his side. So I've learned that I still can't really engage with him. Before, we couldn't engage because we completely disagreed. Now we can't engage because, you know, we're both in bad faith before, and now he's in bad faith.
I actually have a degree in world politics, so I know a lot more than I tend to talk about. I spent a lot of time debating people in college, but I don't really do that anymore, mainly because I don't find it productive. I mean this in the nicest way possible, but I've noticed that the people who like to debate the most tend to know the least. I think that if you're someone who truly does understand the situation we're in as a generation, you're more concerned with finding solutions rather than proving yourself right. In college, when I was in student government, other more conservative students would sometimes come to me and say, hey, I want to work with you to make this campus more inclusive. Because even though I think a certain way, I can see that things around here aren't fair for everyone. And instead of arguing about which one of us is right, I'd rather work together to be a part of the solution. And I was like, bet. But as people have continued to turn up the heat in this culture war, we've lost the opportunity to do that. And I'm saying opportunity, not ability, because we are still able to work together. But with the culture war constantly making enemies out of our own neighbors, there isn't really room to do so right now. People like to say, if you disagree with them, you can just debate them. But nowadays, it's almost impossible to meaningfully engage with the other side. Many people are dishonest and just want to attack you under the guise of a debate. They aren't interested in understanding your perspective. Instead, they're more concerned with trying to turn you into another enemy. At one debate in college, someone in the audience called me the N-word.
Not cool.
Other two panelists also believe the same things I believe. But since I was the only black person on stage, I was the only one attacked because of my race. People shouldn't be attacked physically for their beliefs, but attacking someone's identity because you disagree with them isn't right either. People go out of their way to antagonize others, but then play the victim when that person responds in the same way. It's not very productive when your idea of a debate is going around trying to convince everyone else that they're the problem. Good afternoon, fellas. How we doing? I'm all right. What's going on here? Well, we're just out here trying to have a little respectful debate about the important issues of our time. Care to join us? Sounds interesting. What are we debating? Black people are terrible and we should just get rid of them. Yeah, I'm not doing this. Good luck, bro. We got another triggered liberal. Don't you guys think that sounds a little, I don't know, racist? Not at all. We believe God created us all equally. Yeah, we just think that black people and white people should be separate. Not that they should be treated any less. Okay, I see. You're saying that black people and white people should be separate, but equal. Exactly. But people keep calling us racist for some reason. Yeah, I can't imagine why. You know, they actually tried that before.
Oh.
Really? How did it go? Yeah, so
Will, this is, I mean, it's hilarious, but it's hilarious because of how much of a straw man situation you're creating. I think you could have probably cited some of the actual, like, debate. I don't think this, yes, you wanted to create a absurdity, but I do think that if you had honed it to be more like this is something that these guys like the Charlie Kirks or the what's the other guy's name, Steven Crowder would actually bring up as a debate topic, I think you might be reaching across the aisle better. That's all I'm saying. It's like I think this is going to be, it just tastes like bitter caca to somebody who's on the conservative side, and they're going to think you're being very disingenuous, I guess. Anyways, but I do get it. It's fun. It's a funny thing. Yeah.
some guy named Martin came along and ruined it. Well, he sounds like an awful person. Yeah, can't believe people keep calling you guys racist. The problem with the culture war is that people like to sit around complaining all day, but never put any real action behind it. And that goes even for people I personally agree with. In college, I was a member of the Young Democrats, and our weekly meetings used to be packed with
this checks out.
Students coming to discuss the issues that were important to us. But we also wanted to be a group that was willing to put action behind our words too. And it's not like they were asking people to go start the revolution tomorrow. It was more like, hey guys, this week we talked about food insecurity. So this weekend, we're gonna go volunteer at the food bank to help feed people in the community. However, most of the time, it was the same handful of people showing up to volunteer. And I understand that when you're a college student, your number one focus is school. It's not like I was always there either. But at what point are you gonna make the things you say you care about a priority? At least just once or twice. As someone on the left, I think sometimes we're a bit out of touch with what the things we believe in look like in reality. Many of us are young, and that makes organizing difficult. So our activism is often contained to online spaces.
Oh yeah.
And while it's great to use our social—
Yes, that's the thesis of the video, Will. You nailed it. But I do 100% agree with this. The amount of talk, it's like the idea of like, are you going to talk the talk? Or are you going to walk the walk? And the amount of talking that people can do on every single day, every single issue that comes up, they can have a take and they can broadcast that take to their friends and their followers without having to do anything but move their thumbs around. It's like, if you really want to get to the bottom of these, and this is another thing I think about Vincent, choose your battles. You got to choose. Like you can't both stop homelessness, or you can't help homelessness and I don't know, kids without fathers get adult supervision, and also like, you know, move to us off of a fossil fuel grid. It's like some of us can do, it can help with any of those topics, but none of us can try to do all of those topics. That's where you kind of get the limousine liberal kind of crowd, where they, you know, will have a gala for every little niche event or a cause, and then, like, you know, maybe donate some trinket amount of money and then move on to the next thing. You know, that's probably them at their best, and then that gets worse as you go down the totem pole, and you're just dealing with people who just react, you know, are reply guys, if you will, and just react to every news story that comes across their feed with their correct take.
Social media presence to keep the conversation going. Sometimes we lose sight of our real world goals and start aggressively policing everything in the name of inclusivity. That's called virtue signaling, and ironically, often makes things less inclusive. We all know that one person who's too woke. I've seen it online where people make an enemy out of someone who's genuinely on their side. People were attacking public defense attorneys for doing their job of defending people in court. You can't claim to be for a more equitable society while not understanding the importance of due process.
That's the issue. Point, Will. And lawyers are necessary. You know, that's another meme of, I'm sure it was before my time, it's after my time too, but, you know, it's a cultural meme, like, lawyers are evil people, lawyers are the worst. And it's like, if you get put into a law, like, you need a nuanced law that requires understanding and precedent in order to have a society. And if you're going to have that, you're going to need people who spend all their time just being good at that, so that they can help argue for either side of it, because in the court of law, you literally have to both sides a case. I wish there was something I could do to help unhouse people in my city.
Want to seem like a good person online while lacking true commitment to the cause. And people on the other side cling to that and use it to discredit you. But I get it. I didn't always have the beliefs that I do now. I'm from the South. My friends used to call me GOP Will because I used to have some pretty conservative beliefs. But then I got hit with the woke mind.
It took another young one.
Joking. I was actually patient zero. But as I got older and became more progressive, I had people willing to educate me instead of attacking me because I wasn't woke enough yet. We shouldn't make enemies out of the people who are on the same side as us. If there's one thing I've learned, is that things like misogyny, racism, and homophobia don't belong to a single side. There are people who know how to say all of the right things and still act hateful towards you. And likewise, there are those who might still be learning that don't deserve your hostility. It's important to have principles, but it's also important to understand what making a difference actually looks like too. Recently, there's been a lot of people claiming that Gen Z is shifting to the right, especially the men. But if I can be honest, I don't think this is fully the case. I think Gen Z as a whole is a generation that desires change. The split lies in which direction to go. I think growing up in a more progressive era and then ending up in the situation we're in now, some of us have a desire to return to a simpler time. When I talk to other Gen Z guys who lean a little more to the right, the biggest emotion I get from them isn't hate or even anger, it's fear. They're afraid of the hostility they get from women. They're afraid of being attacked because they made a mistake. They're afraid of losing everything they've worked for because they did something wrong. Everything feels so serious these days, and we should take ourselves and our issues seriously.
It has been said plenty of times before that when you're in a state of fear is like when you're probably most susceptible to, you know, other people's suggestions, other people's, you know, propaganda, if you will. So us being in a state of fear is maybe by design.
But I think the shift to the right isn't really 20-year-olds adopting the ideals of their parents. We live in a different world now. Instead, I think some people just want to relax. Even the research shows that it's hard to accurately report on the politics of our generation because so many of us self-censor how we truly feel. I genuinely believe that most of us do support things like inclusion and equality. The average Zoomer is more aware of people's cultural sensitivities than the older generations. But because some of us have questions about those things or a different perspective, we live in fear of being judged. I've seen people get attacked for simply asking a question. However, there are a lot of bad actors, and these people take this desire for simplicity and turn it into prejudice. Men in particular are starting to feel like outcasts in their own communities. There's an idea that men are no longer necessary in society, and thus should be ignored. We've grown up seeing an expansion of privileges for many different groups, more opportunities for this group, greater protections for that group. And what I hear from other men is that they feel like they're falling behind in school, in the job market, even in their social circles.
I'm pretty sure it's statistically true, but that might be, that requires research, and I understand that that's not like what this video is like trying to swipe at. But it's like, it is, I mean, I felt like I was behind. And I'm like, yet again, look at me. I'm the forebearer of this. I'm a millennial who's behind in life, literally. So there might have been something to that. Or I'm a loser. And I am not going to sit here on camera and admit that I'm a loser. No, it is the institutions that are wrong.
So when the conversation seems like it includes everyone but you, many guys are willing to overlook the bad if it means they get some good. When it feels like nobody keeps a seat open for you at the table, some people end up sitting with the wrong crowd. I'm not making excuses for the bad behavior that comes from the worst of these groups. I think there are already enough people whitewashing the harm being done by these people. And that's another issue. Just like I said, there are people on the left who are out of touch with what they truly believe. The same goes for the right. There are a lot of guys out there who are completely disconnected from the type of person they are in their head versus what they say and do. And I think it's allowed Gen Z to be strung along into ideas they don't fully support. They're telling you that everyone is your enemy and that they are your only ally. They promise you their ideals without showing you their weapons. So you go to war for them, thinking that they're the good guys. They've silenced their weapons with good intentions, so you can't hear the hate in their words. You defend them, not realizing that they're only pushing.
I need to be perfectly clear and say I have no problem with religion. I'm only speaking about people who use it as a means to spread hate without criticism. Yes, I can agree with that, Will.
Further from your peers. You're more concerned about supporting your argument than your character as a person. Hey man, you shouldn't smoke here. There's children around. Well, I was here first. I'm not going anywhere. If the kids don't like it, they can leave. Yeah, but you're smoking at a playground. This is supposed to be a safe space for kids to play, and you're doing something that can harm them. Well, it's the children's fault for playing where I want to smoke. Why should I have to move for them? But you can smoke anywhere in the park. The kids can only play right here. Then we need to ban kids from the park. That way I can smoke in peace. So you'd rather ruin the fun for all of these children than move 10 feet away so everyone can be happy? Exactly. Do you see yourself as a good person? Of course. Why do you ask?
You kind of
no
nailed
reason.
my dad
like
there.
most things.
Not on the that in the way that he approaches these things.
Most things nowadays,
Yes.
a good chunk of the culture war takes place on social media. And social media is only a caricature of reality. The worst parts are exaggerated and the normal parts are minimized. The problem is, for Gen Z, most of us have become reliant on social media as a genuine source of information. I have people honestly telling me that they got radicalized by triggered SJW compilations on YouTube. Like, seriously? An internet meme radicalized you. Even the mainstream news is providing coverage based on posts you see online. And like a caricature, this leads to people developing a very distorted and misinformed worldview. Since Gen Z is getting their information from the internet, that gives content creators a great deal of influence over the way we think. It shouldn't, but it does. Teens and young adults often look to the creators they admire to not only reaffirm their personal beliefs, but also make sense of the world around them. And this makes content creators some of the big.
Now, his hairline is a little too intact there, I would say, to be the real Asmongold. A shirt a little too clean, but yeah, I will say I do enjoy listening to Asmongold and his takes. So I think like to put him as the avatar for this, I like the Chad and Trad or whatever. I think it was a good avatar, but I think Asmongold has a little bit more diversity of thought. And granted, he has some real rancid takes on a couple of issues, but I don't think he's I don't know. But he's very, you do have to admit though, he is becoming very influential. He's definitely taking over the internet from what I'm seeing.
biggest agents in the culture war. Although I hope we can all agree that we shouldn't be getting our opinions from people on the internet, I think we value the authenticity of a regular person's perspective.
Look it up. It's in a book. Come on now.
Perspective on things. The problem, though, is that many content creators also continue to feed into the culture war. I've noticed that a lot of creators who used to simply cover things like video games, anime, and entertainment have more recently pivoted into covering politics on their respective platforms, introducing their audiences to more of their personal beliefs through their content. So much so that even when they return to covering their usual subjects, their commentary keeps that political context. Times are hard, and we often look to our favorite creators for a break from our problems. But many of these creators are also trying to recruit you to their side of the culture war through bad faith arguments and mean-spirited commentary on everyone who has a different perspective or experience. I just feel like if all of your content is informed by you looking at tweets and Reddit posts, you probably don't have the most well-rounded perspective on the issues you choose to comment on. Like I said, social media is a caricature of reality. It's not the full picture. So when the only conversations you're having are the ones taking place online, it's no surprise that others see you as a misinformed grifter. Another thing is that it's an obvious echo chamber as well. You often see a lot of these same creators sharing audiences and reacting to and providing additional commentary on each other's content. And when one of them gets called out, they often run defense for each other as well. They're on the same team, and they want you to be on it too. And when you sit in these online echo chambers, you don't realize that most people don't think this way. But when you try to push back against them, they endlessly move the goalposts so that you always lose and they always win. And that's the problem with these people, chat. The other side is always making a big deal about minor issues. Nobody cares about the race and gender of a fictional character. They need to stop putting this woke agenda in our video games. Now, on to the real issues. Look at this character, chat. She's a minority and a woman. We should care about the race and gender of a fictional character. They're trying to erase us. Suddenly, representation is very important to me.
Oh, wait,
this wouldn't be that much of an issue if these ideas...
This isn't meant to be a hit piece on these creators. They are an example of a trend I've seen from many others as well. Yeah, he kind of like boiled it down to like, you know, I guess one of the mini echo chambers. These are more observations than they are criticisms. I can't talk about the culture war without mention of the role the creators play in it. That's true. I don't know, like if I had an overall, like I definitely couldn't sit down and listen. I don't like watch Asmon or Dev Says Rev talk about anything and everything. I don't watch their streams, but when they talk about something that I am interested in or I think is important, I think it also goes to the minutia of being a nearly 24-hour content creation machine. I mean, Asmon does well over 4 a day whenever he's on, and that Rev probably has to make multiple videos a day. And there's plenty of people like them that have to, do that. And you're going to have to, start really dissecting and getting to the very little pieces in order to continue that grind. I think that's the worst thing about contemporary social media. One of the worst things is the fact that it's a factory or it's a shop that's open 24 hours a day. It used to be back in the day, you would have an hour, the boomer generation, the Gen Xers, they would have like a couple hours of the day where they would get news. It was news programming, and it would be like a local news block and then a national news block. And it made it to where anything that, the lack of time to cover things meant that every story had to be concise, and not every story made it on the air. So it made it to where there was a bit of a selection process. And I do think gatekeeping is kind of important, because right now we don't really have, our gatekeepers are algorithms, I guess, but we don't really have a proper gatekeeper. And all the gatekeeper cares about is not honesty, authenticity, factual matters. All it cares about is reaction. And is this tracking? Is this rising is this rising above everything else? Then let's put a spotlight on it and get it to go as far as it can and get as much attention on it as possible. So I do, but I will say that yet again, I think it straw mans those two a little bit. They can sometimes be caricatures of themselves, but I do think that they probably contribute. The two that you brought up probably contribute more good than more well-rounded criticism from their perspectives than they do like slop. At least what makes it to YouTube.
Ideas stayed within these communities. But due to their large influence, their negativity is also affecting others. When you constantly tell your audience that the people they play video games with, watch anime with, and go to school with are their enemy, they go and create division in those spaces too. The same people who try to gatekeep their communities from tourists are often the same people who get offended when you try to stand up against them in your own community. Even our interests become a battleground for the culture war. I've also come to realize that between myself and these creators, our audiences have some overlap. And to be honest, this used to make me nervous. I rarely agree with these people on anything, but despite that, many people, regardless of their beliefs, also resonate with my content. And it's made me realize that I have a unique opportunity as a creator. I'm not here to tell you what to believe or who you should watch, but I have the chance to offer another perspective to the audience that we share. One that hopefully encourages a bit more empathy for those different from you. I used to feel powerless against all of the hate that I see online sometimes, like I had to just sit back and hope for the best. But I realized that if other creators can make videos offering their perspective, maybe I could do the same. It's been a year since I started making these videos talking about the Gen Z experience. And one thing I've learned is that across the world, we're probably more alike than we are different. I never expected...
The great thing about humanity is that there are certain things that cut across and up and down. And usually up and down is culture or like nationalism or religion. That's what unites a newborn baby to a grandfather or to an old man in the community, is like your shared like geographical things, like I said, religion, nationality. And then there's the things that cut across, and those tend to be age, generational things. It's like I have more in common with a 40-something in Germany who's also a loser than I necessarily have in common with a 60-year-old here in America, or a 10-year-old here in America. I'm more likely to be able to be that person's friend than I am my own American 10-year-old when it comes to something more like this, just shooting the shit and everything like that, versus the 10-year-old. I would have more in common with them when it came to instilling the cultural values and reinforcing those cultural values. So I do think that it's and I think you speaking to Generation Z specifically is very important. Like, I think you found your niche in the same way that Shu has found her her beat of the gender war. You've almost found the beat of the Gen Z's existential crisis and all the problems that are facing Gen Z. But the thing I will say is these problems you're bringing up now are very much similar and echo problems that millennials and probably Gen X, maybe even boomers, went through. It's more about being at that time in your life and what people want from you in that era. You are so important. You are so malleable. You could be swooped up, and any one of you could be the next Albert Einstein, or worse. Or I could bring up bad names too. Any one of you could be the next Mark Zuckerberg, the next Steve Jobs. They're out there trying to pluck because they themselves they know that their limits. But any one of y'all could be limitless. Any one of y'all could be super special and become somebody who could be a true mover and shaker. Sorry to evoke his name again, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened with Charlie Kirk. He got plucked out early because of how smart he was, how they saw a lot of promise for him. And let's face it, if he wasn't murdered, he probably would have been a presidential candidate at one point. Not saying he would have won. He might not even won the primaries, but I'm pretty sure he would have been taken seriously in the primaries if he had lived another 10 years or so. So, I guess my big point there. There's a lot of points there, but I think that you're doing the right thing ultimately. A little less straw manning, but hey, you know, you got to get your, you know, your jollies in. You got to get your jokes in.
That my videos talking about my experiences as a Gen Z adult would be relatable to so many people. One of my biggest privileges as a creator has been interacting with people from all over the world. I remember one night I thought my Twitter was getting botted because I was suddenly getting a bunch of followers from China. But it was because someone re-uploaded my videos on Bilibili. Because even all the way in China, people are coping with being a Gen Z adult. Times are confusing, and we're all struggling in different ways with the same things. I don't make these videos to change anyone's mind or act like I have all of the answers. I don't. I just know that the direction we're going now isn't the way forward. I think that's something we can all agree on. The older generation started the culture war, but we don't have to be the ones to finish it. We don't need to keep endlessly fighting each other while the people with actual power continue to make our lives worse. Older people call us lazy for being tired of the problems they created, and we're often referred to as the worst generation. But maybe that's a good thing. One thing I see being thrown around a lot in this culture war is
millennials were also the worst generation, and we might very well be. I'm not going to go to bat for millennials. You know what's going to suck, Will? I really hope you're watching this. What's going to suck is we're going to proportion. What is it called? We're going to have more millennials than Gen Z. I'm pretty sure Gen Z and Gen Alpha nearly combined doesn't make up the same amount of millennials. Y'all are going to be suffering under our cringe ass boot in the same way that Generation X suffered under the boomers boot. Like what if they get across to us what they want to have happen and how they want an election to go, it will most likely be decided by millennials. Just demographically, unfortunately, that's going to be true.
It's this idea of good times create weak men and weak men create hard times. Personally, I think this is corny. You are not a Spartan, little bro.
I will say I
do
no subscribe a bit
there
to
is
the
no
weak men
strength
create
in
hard
violence.
times, you know, kind of thing. It's just the cycle of times. I mean, maybe it shouldn't be. There's probably a better way of saying it, but I do think that it is a situation where the cycle, you know, like how about this? You are blind to the problems that you can't foresee because you are focused on the problems that you were unable to previously foresee. And by that, what I mean is, like, we became say 9/11. We became hyper fixated after 9/11 on the idea of domestic terrorism, but other or not international, I guess, international domestic terrorism. That's maybe the way I should say it. But then other problems started to arise. And while we were hyper vigilant on the domestic terrorism, we were lacking in it was causing our perception to be limited to that, and other problems arised out of the sides that we then did not know how to deal with until they reared their ugly head. And it's just like, everybody's, like, while we should be reacting with foresight, and I think that's where, you know, a good content creator can come, is like, if you're out there looking for the arising problems out in the world, you might actually be able to head them off. But most of the time, especially governments, and especially, you know, politicians and governments, they're looking at what people are upset about and looking at, like, how they happened and are trying to fix for that. So maybe that's a better way of putting it, instead of the strong man, weak man thing. It's more like you're always blind to the next problem because you're still trying to solve the last problem. Mm-hmm.
And there is no wisdom in war. We all lose the longer we continue to fight. Giving into the hate is weakness, and good times last when we choose to become better people. True strength lies in kindness, and real wisdom can be found in the desire to understand. Hate will never win. And I'm not here to tell you that the solution to all of our problems is to just love each other either. The culture war is like mud, and there are people who dwell in the mud, and you'll always lose when you try to fight them on their home turf. Mud makes it really hard to move forward. So I think that if we avoid it, we'll get to where we're going a lot faster. Alone, our problems seem almost impossible to solve. But when we work together, the task becomes a lot more manageable. Just don't be someone who only receives help without reaching back and helping others too. We never asked to be in this situation, but whether it keeps getting worse is up to us. So remember, hate will never win. Thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe and follow me on Twitter. Peace.
I'm hoping the Discord comes soon because this guy needs to be making this his full-time job. I hope that he's on his way because he is a great video maker. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. Like he said, please like and subscribe to my channel. But in all honesty, there is a link down below for the original video. Jump over there, give it a like, give it a subscribe. And as always, please, if you can, go and check out my game, X Seekers of Fortune, at xseekersoffortune.com. Yet again, link down below. You can see the trailer that we have here on YouTube that can give you an idea of how the game plays. It's going to be coming out very soon, assuming Trump's tariffs don't completely gut us as a company. And besides that, well, enjoy yourself.